Now, looking at design for additive manufacturing, and here's where I'm going to ask Brad to chime in a little bit, but there are some part shape properties that work best in this process. We've certainly got a sweet spot for that. And I'll tell you after Brad talks through those, I'll give you some tips on going outside of those parameters.
Sure. Am I on?
Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
Okay. Pieces that thick tend to be more challenging. So if you picture during the debinding process, the plastic that was holding the metal particles together needs to leave the object. And when you have a thick, blocky part, it can cause distortions as it's leaving, and it can cause the surface of the part, we call it pillowing, where it will delaminate slightly and it'll get sort of a pillowing look to it. This can be overcome, but the easiest parts to do are parts that are, say, 3 to 5 millimeters thick at the maximum, and this makes it very simple for the binder to leave the part during the debinding process.
So Brad's talking about thickness. Now you see a couple of parts on the screen there, and I do have those in my hand, so if you can see me a little bit, here is that Easter Island head. It's massive. It's about 6 pounds of copper. It's about the same size as my head. This one is sintered, but it did suffer a little bit from exactly what Brad is talking about. It had a little bit of a blowout as the gas was escaping during debinding. Now that Coliseum print is turned out beautifully. So it's a large print, but it has smaller or thinner uniform walls. And so that one turned out great. So you can see the difference between those two. Thinner walls are going to work best. Holes and threads, you're going to tap those after the fact. So you might, in your model, make those a little bit smaller and then drill them out later. And infill, we're going to talk about recommended infill percentage in a minute, but we do also have tips for going outside of these sweet spot parameters. And one of those is in the What's the Biggest Part I Can Make podcast discussion. So Austin will put a link to that one in the chat here. If you want to know how to get to the size of the parts that you're seeing on the screen and how to go outside of what's best for the design parameters, take a look at that podcast. There'll be a lot more information in there